Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill alongside Hunter Brody here. Of course, joining us as he does each and every Friday, talk football. The football scientist, the one and only KC Joyner. And of course, if I'm hosting the Sports Bash, I throw a little edge on there for KC Joyner. I believe Edge is supposed to be returning from his torn triceps injury at some point, KC Joyner. How you doing today?
Doing great. Ed's great. I had a chance to talk to him a couple years ago for an interview he did. He did some work for a charity and things. Fantastic guy.
So, Casey, we had football last night. We have a game that was moved. Before we get to any of the actual games played or going to be played, I just want to get your quick thought on the Ravens-Steelers supposed to be last night. Then was moved to Sunday. Now is moved to Tuesday. We know that Lamar Jackson was put on the COVID list, so a lot of shuffling for the Ravens. Stephon Tuitt was put on the COVID list for the Steelers. So we're not even going to see a 100% version of either team when they do play on Tuesday night.
I just hope for the Steelers' sake especially, and I don't mean anything against the Ravens, but the Ravens have a massive outbreak already, so there's really nothing they can do. All they can do is cap the problems that they have. But hope for the Steelers' sake that the Ravens don't have anybody who happens to be could give it to them during that contest, because really from the league's perspective, this is your undefeated team. This is the best team in the league, arguably, and you don't want to see them have that season diminished because you decided to force a game in against Baltimore instead of either playing at Week 18 or, frankly, just canceling the thing. Because I think that saving the integrity of the season, doing that needs to be the number one priority. And if the Ravens can't do that because of their COVID outbreak, then you need to cancel the game.
When you think about that game also, a lot of players are frustrated because they say they don't want the game canceled because they don't want to lose their paycheck. So, how do you feel about that whole situation?
Yeah, you need to. I mean, that's where I don't want to say this to say it would be blaming the Ravens, but the Ravens have an outbreak in their organization. So if it happened to them, that'd be you'd feel for them, but you'd also go, okay, well, somebody in the organization got it, and whoever happened there. So, but I mean, if you're looking at it from the Steelers' perspective, I mean, if they lost the game, it's like they didn't even have a COVID outbreak in their organization, and now they get to lose it. I mean, they did last weekend, but they kept it in check. I guess it's tough because for the league, you want to see that sort of thing happen, but honestly, if the integrity of the season means that the Steelers have to eat a paycheck, then that's life. You guys are 10-0, and now you can have a chance to go 15-0. You can still be one of the only undefeated teams in league history. So you got to look at it from the Steelers' perspective as a positive too. If something were to happen, at least that gets them one step closer to unbeaten.
Casey, there were two games played yesterday. The Texans ran away from the Lions. Dallas was actually a close game for three quarters, and then the Cowboys imploded and Washington capitalized. So let's start with the Texans versus the Lions, Casey. Deshaun Watson, 4 touchdowns. The Lions, they had a couple of shots. I mean, Adrian Peterson played well, but aside from that, the rest of the Lions team seemed like they didn't show up.
The Lions have wanted to be. Their front office has tried to build a team that's a power football team. Matt Patricia wants them to be a power football team. They want to power run the ball on offense and have that dominant defense, and it just hasn't happened. They've tried some of the same schematic techniques or similar techniques to what Patricia used in New England. It just doesn't work because they just don't have enough talent on that side of the ball, and they just can't play that type of game, and so they need to try and get in these high-scoring games, but you can't do that when you're missing Kenny Golladay and Danny Amendola, and you have that and Swift, and you've got them people out on offense. You're just not going to be able to get into that sort of contest. So I think Detroit, I think it's going to be the end of Patricia's reign there, and they're going to have to find somebody who can try to effectively implement that power game because he hasn't been able to do it.
Washington got the victory, as we mentioned. They are now the leaders in the NFC East. Should they be the favorites to win now the NFC East?
The way they've been playing of late, yes, because people, when they're looking at the East especially, people are looking at it's a terrible division. These teams are awful. And yet if you start looking at how the teams have been playing of late, like New York, they've been playing better of late. You look at Washington, they've been playing much better of late. And this is a much different team with Alex Smith under center. In fact, I say, imagine if Washington had Smith under center for the whole season. Is there another win or two there? Probably, and then you're talking an entirely different scenario for them. So I think they should be the favorite because the way he's been playing, he's the most consistent quarterback in this division, and that's a huge plus for them.
It also seemed like Dallas got outcoached in that game. A lot of people are asking, how does Dallas punt in that situation, that bizarre fake? It seemed like Mike McCarthy was just outclassed by Ron Rivera and his coaching staff yesterday.
Is there a game where Mike McCarthy doesn't get outcoached? It seems to come up every single time. He makes these questionable decisions. His play calling in and of itself, the kind of schemes that he uses, they're very basic schemes. They're very simplistic schemes. He misses in a lot of areas. And I wondered, in fact, when McCarthy, when he was out in Green Bay, I remember posting on Twitter, I said, I don't think an organization is going to want to hire him. I know he's a Super Bowl winning coach, but I don't think they're going to want to hire him because he makes so many basic errors, and there's so many things that he does that, like, Aaron Rodgers rescued him because Aaron Rodgers can make any coach look good, and I wondered if a team would want to hire him, and when Dallas did, and people were like, oh, you see, he did get hired after all. I'm like, well, let's see how that goes. And McCarthy's now there, and we're seeing what Mike McCarthy is without Aaron Rodgers in his prime. And it's not a very good coaching job. And I don't look at any part of their organization and say, wow, they're well coached in this area, like motivation or things of that nature, and even number of factors. I'm looking at that going, if I'm the Cowboys, why am I not putting an end to this experiment after year one? Why am I trying this for year two? Because this is what it's going to be from here on out, more than likely.
We'll dive deeper into the Eagles-Seahawks game with Casey on Monday night, leading you up the Eagles-Seahawks right here on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, a quick thought on the Eagles news that came out today. Lane Johnson done for the year. He says his ankle collapsed, so he's having basically his ankle rebuilt through surgery. Meanwhile, Jason Peters is going to be moved from left tackle to right guard. So a bunch of shuffling going on the Eagles line again.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they're going to be able to do some of the things they were doing last week, because last week was the first time, it may have been partially due to the opponent, it was the first time all season that you saw the Eagles start to do a lot of creative things in the offensive line. We're seeing short traps, long traps, wham traps. We're seeing just a lot of different variations on things that, because you can throw a lineman out there and say, hey, play zone, and they've got certain basic rules in place. Okay, they know if they know they're supposed to block, which you can pretty easily do in the zone scheme. It's simple to move somebody in there, but it's a simplistic scheme to defend too. So it was good to see them be able to get these more complex blocking schemes in there, and having all these shifts around makes me wonder if they're going to be able to keep that up, because if they got to go back to the simplistic approach, it does harm their running game.
KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Follow me on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS for all your NFL and fantasy football all year long. Casey, let's jump one thought from every game like you do with Mike Gill. I'll do my best, my Mike Gill impersonation here for these one thought on every games here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Let's start with I think it's one of the more interesting games of the entire slate. Titans, Colts. That's the 1 o'clock game. Folks can hear it right here on 97.3 ESPN this Sunday. Colts won the first game. Can they win the second?
Thing is, both of them are 7-3. Yeah, they're going in different directions. Colts have won 4 of their last 5. Their offense doing really well, 400 or more yards in 3 of those wins and 31 points in 4 of the other victories. The Titans, they've lost 3 of the last 5 because they can't put points on the board. They've only got 61 points in the 3 losses they've had out of those last 5 games. It makes me think that the Titans just can't keep up in a high-scoring contest, and Indianapolis can turn it into one of those. So I got the Colts in this one.
Justin Herbert and the Chargers finally got a win last week. Now they travel to Buffalo to pay the Bills. Can they make it 2 in a row against the Bills team coming off a bye?
Chargers have put up 26 or more points in 6 of the past 7 games. And the problem for them is that their defense has given up 28 or more points in 7 straight games. I mean, that's just abysmal. Buffalo got back, over the last couple of weeks, they've gotten back to what they were earlier this year because they were high scoring, and then teams figured out how to slow them down after that Tennessee game. And the thing is Buffalo, if they get into a shootout game, Buffalo's 4-1 in shootout games this year. The Chargers are 2-3-1, and their 2 wins came against the Jets and Jaguars. I think the Bills are better suited to win a high-scoring game, so I'm picking them.
Panthers, Vikings, 2 teams are on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs, but they both are teams that have something to play for, in my mind at least, because they both have coaches going in different directions. They
do. I mean, I like Carolina's coach, but they are not playing quite as well of late. Minnesota, I mean, they had that bad game last week, and they've given up 350 more yards to an opponent on 8 occasions this year. That's not a Mike Zimmer-like team. Problem with Carolina is with CMC out, Mike Davis was very good, but he ran out of gas. That's the thing about bell cow backs, is the best bell cow backs don't run out of gas. That's what makes CMC so great. His 300th carry will be just as productive as his first. Mike Davis is not a bell cow back, so he's wearing down. Their backups aren't quite as good. And the Panthers did great last week, but that was because Detroit had a bad offense, and it's not the case here, so I'll take Minnesota.
Browns have had a couple of games in the sloppy weather at home. Now they get to travel to Jacksonville, where they hope it's going to be nicer weather when they take on Mike Glennon and the Jacksonville Jags.
Yeah, Mike Glennon. And the thing is, Cleveland has allowed 17 or fewer points in 3 straight, and they've given up 250 or fewer net passing yards in 5 of their last 6. And they got help in the weather in that one game, but they've been playing well on offense or on defense in a number of ways. And their offense hasn't been quite as good. They started off the year, they got 32 or more points in 4 of the first 5, but they scored 10 or fewer in 3 of the past 5. I think they'll get enough offense out of this game to where their defense will keep Glennon. I'd be surprised if Jacksonville scores more than 17 points. I'll take Cleveland.
Giants are traveling to Cincinnati to play the Joe Burrow-less Bengals, so it disappoints a lot of people in fantasy football, and the Giants are an ascending team right now.
Yeah, I got Burrow on one of my main teams, and I'd be playing him in place of Lamar Jackson this week, but now I'm stuck with playing Sam Darnold. So, yeah, he's crushing people in fantasy. The Giants, though, I mentioned earlier, 1-7 was their start, but they look like they're trending in a much better direction of late. They've scored 20 more points in 6 straight games. Last 2 games, 7 of the 32 offensive yards, 0 giveaways. I mean, they're playing very well on offense, and they've got 12 takeaways since week 4 on defense. So they're playing better on both sides of the ball, and I think, losing Burrow is just a huge crushing blow for Cincinnati. So I'll take the Giants.
KC Joyner, one thought on every game. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS, the football scientist, here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Cardinals travel to the Patriots. Patriots been inconsistent. One week they could beat the Ravens. Next week they can't beat the Texans. Good news, Kyler Murray not on the injury report with the shoulder, so it seems like the Cardinals should be full strength.
They should be. I think for the Patriots, though, they're not what they were in the Tom Brady years, but over the past 3 weeks, 1,176 offensive yards and 0 giveaways. So they're moving the ball on offense. Problem is they've only scored 30 or more points only once since week 4, and the Cardinals have been scoring 30 or more points almost all the time. They didn't against Seattle, but I think that was because it's a road game on Thursday night. I mean, it's the Thursday night road game blues. So I think Arizona is able to turn this thing into a much higher scoring game because New England just can't turn those yards into points. I'll take Cardinals.
You mentioned Sam Darnold earlier was playing the Dolphins, and I got the Dolphins defense starting in my fantasy league. So who do you think is going to get the better week here? It's going to be the Dolphins defense or Sam Darnold here?
I think it's going to be the Dolphins defense. They'll return back to form. Their front seven's good. They've got some problems back in the secondary. They haven't been. They've had a few problems too, though, because they've allowed 440 more offensive yards in 3 of the past 4 contests. I just don't know that New York is that team. I mean, now they're going to the third-string running back, Ty Johnson. He's going to have in very deep fantasy leagues. He's not somebody you would think is going to put up a whole lot of points against Miami. The Dolphins also, by the way, they benched Tua last week, I would think in part because they posted fewer than 300 net offensive yards in 3 of the past games, 3 of the games that he started. So I think this game will be closer than people think it is, but I'm still going to pick Miami because they got a big talent edge, but it won't surprise me if New York were to pull off the upset.
The best team to lose a game in Week 12 was the Raiders. They played so well against the Chiefs. They just gave Pat Mahomes too much time on the clock. Now they travel to the Falcons. I expect this to be a high-scoring game, Casey.
I would think it would be. The Silver and Black have scored 98 points over the past 3 games. They have yet to post fewer than 300 net offensive yards in the game and only have 2 giveaways in the past 4 games. And Atlanta's defense says they've not allowed fewer than 350 net offensive yards in the game this year. They've allowed 23 more offensive points in all but 1 matchup. And Atlanta, by the way, is as good as their offense was earlier this year. They've scored 22 or fewer points in 4 out of the past 7. So I think percentage-wise, I don't know that they keep up in a high-scoring game. So I'll take the Raiders.
4 o'clock game start with the Saints at the Broncos. It's game 2 for Taysom Hill against a scrappy Broncos team.
Against scrappy Broncos team, very much so. They're getting the most out of what talent that they have. The Saints didn't miss Drew Brees because they're no longer a pass-centric team. They've been wanting to not be a pass-centric team for a while. They've thrown for more than 300 net passing yards only twice this year, and they've gained 100 or more rushing yards in all but 2 contests. And their defense has held 7 straight posts under 250 net passing yards. They also have 10 takeaways in the past 4 weeks, and they've only given up 48 rushing yards per game on average in the past 5 contests. I think Denver worked its way around some limitations for Miami last week, and it helped them. But I think the talent edge is too big of a difference for New Orleans. I'll take Saints.
Arguably the most injured team in the NFL this year has been the 49ers. They might have Mostert back, but the Rams are red hot who they're going against.
Rams are red hot. I think this Rams team is better than the Super Bowl team. I really do, and that's saying a lot. But they held Seattle and Tampa Bay. Those are two pretty powerhouse offenses to a total of 40 points and 429 passing yards between them. They've generated 2 takeaways in 4 straight games. Their offense doesn't score a ton of points, but they've got 370 more offensive yards in all but 2 games this year. So they really can move the ball and hold the ball. And San Francisco's posted 2 or more giveaways in 6 of the past 7 games. So I think the Rams win the turnover battle and win the game.
The final 4 o'clock game on the schedule is a game you can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. Pat Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs against Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks. No intro required.
Yeah, with that quarterback matchup, I mean, it's one of the must-see matchups of the year. The thing is, Kansas City started the year with a ground-and-pound approach. There are a lot of reasons for it because they want to keep from getting into high-scoring games. But of late, they've got back to their pass-happy ways. They're going for 350 more net passing yards in 3 straight games. They scored a ridiculous 36.5 points per game over the past 4 contests. The Chiefs' secondary is playing better, and it might be why they're going with this approach because now their secondary is giving up fewer than 250 net passing yards in 6 games this year. They finally have a secondary that can shut people down before they needed the rushing game to slow the other team down. Tampa, they do well when they score 300 when they get 330 more offensive yards. They're 6-1. They're 1-3 when they don't. I think the Chiefs' defense is going to be able to keep Tampa Bay underneath that 330 mark. So I'll take the Chiefs.
Finally on the slate, you have Sunday Night Football. Packers hosting the Bears. What's interesting about this game, Casey, is that the Bears are better on the road than at home, and the Packers have been better on the road than at home.
And the Packers, I think if it wasn't for the NFC East, the Packers would be the least impressive division leader in the league. Because think about it, last 6 weeks, Tampa Bay destroys them. They got run over by Minnesota's rushing attack. They scored 3 points in the second half in overtime and blowing a 14-point lead to the Colts. And their 3 wins came against mediocre teams. So they're not playing that well, but the problem for Chicago is they're a mediocre team right now. They've lost 4 straight, and they posted 17 or fewer points in 3 of those losses. They've got the quarterback issue. I believe they're starting Trubisky, but I don't think it matters who they were to start because their offense is just playing that poorly. I think Green Bay can turn this into a higher-scoring game, and so I'll take the Packers.
There you go. That's your Sunday slate preview. Of course, Eagles play on Monday Night Football. Of course, folks can get that full preview from Casey on Monday's edition of the Sports Bash right here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow KC Joyner on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS. And Casey, before we let you go, tell folks a little bit about PayDirt.
PayDirt is my fantasy football subscription service. I do a start-sit service. I do waiver chats. I do Sunday morning chats to help people with their starting lineups. And you can go to thefootballscientist.com and use the code GIL to get 10% off.
There you go. At KC Joyner TFS, thefootballscientist.com. We'll talk with Casey again on Monday here on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, have a great weekend.
You too. Appreciate it.